Welcome to Bands That Change Their Sound for the Worst. We recently just did one of bands that changed their sound for the better, in this guy's opinion. And you may disagree, so feel free to pop down in the comments below what bands you think have changed their sound for the worst. What bands did you used to love, but now dislike or don't like as much? Because a lot of the bands on my list that I'm looking at right now, I don't dislike the later stuff, it's just I think the earlier stuff is way better. And some of that, you may disagree with, and that's all good. That's what the comments box is for. So tippity type, and let's get started with my list of bands that change their sound for the worst. And let's get the obvious one out of the way. The most obvious one on this entire list, Metallica. That's right, Metallica changed their sound for the worst, in my opinion. I think the later stuff is okay. I think the later stuff is pretty good. Death Magnetic, I actually enjoy that album. Cyanide, All Nightmare Long, there's some good songs on that. Hardwired to Self-Destruct, pretty fun album, but it's that mid-period where they changed into Load, Reload, and Saint Anger, which is just a massive step down. I mean, a lot of people complained about the change to the Black Album, but I think the Black Album's fine. I don't see any problem with the Black Album. Bit more mainstream, sure. A bit more ballad heavy, sure, but it's fine. It's a fine album. But after that, the sound changed to Load and Reload. Dumpster fire, terrible. If you mix those two albums together, you might have a kind of cohesive album, but two albums separate they do nothing for me. You know, you've got country songs in there, like Mama Said, like what is that about? The songs are generic, they're just trying to become, I don't know, they're trying to become more famous than they already are. I mean, the Black Album already set them up, so I don't know what these other albums are trying to do, to be honest. But yeah, Load and Reload sucks, and Saint Anger was just terrible. Terrible. There's a lot of people nowadays saying that it's like this magnum opus, this like underrated gem in the catalogue. No, it's just shit. It's always been shit, and it always will be shit. That album fucking sucks. So yeah, Metallica. One of the bands that changed their sound for the worst. Next up is a band, I'm going to say, Sepultura. Sepultura changed their sound for the worst. Now, do I think the later stuff is bad? No, again, they kind of recaptured, I wouldn't say the glory days, but they've, become a lot better. Albums like Quadra, pretty good. Machine Messiah is a fantastic album, actually. Really enjoy that. But that mid-period again, changing from like Schizophrenia, changing from Arise, Chaos AD even, into Roots and that new metal phase, the more tribal stuff, just doesn't sit well with me. It's just not as good as the death thrash stuff. Just not as good as the more black metal stuff, like the early Bestial Devastations, stuff like that. The first album, Morbid Visions, insane. Then you got the stuff like Schizophrenia, Beneath the Remains, which is my favourite Sepultura album, which is hard-hitting, heavy, thrashy, evil goodness, but then it comes to like Roots onwards, and Against is a terrible album. Like, holy shit. As soon as they changed vocalists, like, they went downhill instantly. Like a snap, they went downhill. Music went to shit, but they've risen from the ashes like a phoenix, and the newer albums are pretty good, so give the newer albums a chance. If you didn't like the transitional periods, give the newer ones a chance because it's alright, but the sound did change for the worst. Here's another one, Darkthrone. Darkthrone's albums have changed for the worst. This one's sad because I want to like the newer stuff as much as I do the older stuff, but I just don't. The newer albums are a bit more doomy, which I do enjoy, like Eternal Hails was fine, but was it anything spectacular? No. Arctic Thunder was good, but really, does it hold a candle to the first 6 or whatever? No, it doesn't. Ever since they changed to the more cross-punky sound is where they kind of just fell off. Then the albums just became not for me, didn't like the sound, didn't like the era. They tried to recapture it from Arctic Thunder onwards, and it's okay. It's a different style, different sound, but it's just not the same. It's just not the same. The classic period, you got the debut, which is more death metal, which is great. Actually, fantastic album. Then you got the Unholy Trilogy, which are killer. Panzerfaust is amazing. There's a lot of other good ones in there. Total Death, Ravishing Grimness, pretty good. Goat Lord. But then, yeah, Crust Punk onwards, not for me. Not for me. And as much as I kind of like Arctic Thunder, it's just not the same. So Darkthrone has got to make it here. Oh boy, here we go. Let's talk about one of my favourite bands of all time. Opeth. That's correct. The mighty Opeth. Of course it's going to be on this list. Now this isn't like the others. I don't hate the newer stuff. I like every single album by the band. In fact, they're all fantastic. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that the newer half of the discography is better than the older half, because it's just not true. It's just not true. For me. A lot of people, like, I know Sea of Tranquility has, like, Sorcerer's Top as his favourite albums, but for me, I can't do it. Can't do it. This newer era of, like, prog rock, 70s prog rock, is good, but I feel like it's been done hundreds of times before. It's like the copying King Crimson, Cream, or any of the other, you know, bands like Camel, like any bands like that. They're just copying them. Whereas the older stuff has its own identity and doesn't sound like anything else. So that's why I like the first half of the discography a lot more. You know, albums like Still Life, one of my favourites of all time. Probably my favourite album of all time. Blackwater Park, fantastic. Deliverance, even Damnation's beautiful. Morning Rise and Orchid, so good. Watershed, I love. Some people don't, but I love that one. But after Watershed, the sound change just didn't kill it for me. It was just very jarring. I know this is a generic one, a lot of people pick this, but I do like all the 70s prog rock stuff as well. So I do like all these albums. Pale Communion is a fantastic album. Love that album. But is it better than Blackwater Park? Fuck no it isn't. Fuck no it isn't. And you're lying if you say it is. But yeah, it's got to mention Opeth on this list. It just has to be done. And now we come to my final pick, which is probably the most controversial. Let's talk about the mighty Bathory. Bathory is on this list. Oh shit. Here we go, Questy. Here we go. I love early Bathory. The debut, thrashy goodness. It might even be my favourite nowadays. Like, I love like the songs about Necromancy. Hades, oh, so good. Then you got the starting to get into more black metal stuff with the return of Darkness and Evil, which is a great album. Then Under the Sign of the Black Mark, masterpiece. Blood, Fire, Death, masterpiece. Then it kind of loses me. I know some people are going to start raging at this bit. Hammerheart doesn't do much for me. It's a good album, but I don't know, it lacks the black metal ferocity of the first couple of albums. It just lacks that kind of energy. It's still a good album, but it just, I don't know, for me, it just lacks. It's still good. This is another one like Opeth, where I like all the later stuff. I just don't think they're even close to as good as the newer stuff. And this will be one people will shout at in the comments. I know Hammerheart Reviews, his name's Hammerheart, so I know he's going to be pretty pissed at me saying this. But yeah, for me, after Blood, Fire, Death, I just don't like the albums as much. I think the sound change to more Viking style just doesn't sit well with me. It just doesn't. I do like Nordland 1 and 2. You know, Twilight of the Gods. These are all fine albums. Octagon's shit. That's a shit album. But the rest are fine. It's just not as good. The first ones are like 10 out of 10s. Then it kind of dips in quality. Still like them, just not as amazing as the early stuff. So those are a few bands that changed their sound for the worst, in my opinion. Let me know what you think down below. What bands changed their sound for the worst for you? Do you agree with my picks? Do you disagree? Rabble, 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 rabble. Let me know down below, and we'll see you again on another Quest for Metal.